A brazen tourist crossed the line, mocking the royal guard as her personal spectacle. But the guard's booming command, a veteran's quiet words, and a child's heartfelt gesture turned the scene into an unforgettable lesson in respect. Here's what happened. The sun bathed London in golden light as tourists thronged to Buckingham Palace, eager to catch a glimpse of the famed royal guards. The rhythmic clip-clop of horses' hooves echoed across the cobblestones, blending seamlessly with the quiet murmurs of admiration from the growing crowd. Standing tall among the pageantry was Sergeant Jonathan Harrow, a figure of unyielding discipline. His crimson tunic, perfectly pressed, and the iconic bearskin cap marked him as a living emblem of centuries-old tradition. He was a fortress of stoicism amidst the swirling chaos of modern tourism. Enter Karen Summers, a force of nature, if one could call brash entitlement by such a poetic name. In her glaring neon-pink tracksuit, she barreled through the crowd like a brightly colored wrecking ball, clutching an oversized novelty feather. It swayed absurdly as she pushed closer to the guards, a grin plastered across her face. "All right, y'all," she called out, her southern accent amplified by the phone she thrust forward to capture her live stream. "Let's see if these royal statues are as tough as they make out." Ignoring the clearly marked "Do Not Cross" signs, Karen stepped brazenly over the white line, her every movement designed to command attention. Gasps rippled through the crowd as she advanced, brandishing the feather like a ridiculous weapon of humiliation. The air was thick with tension, a collective sense of dread growing among the spectators. Sergeant Harrow stood motionless, the consummate professional. Yet, those trained to notice might have seen his grip tighten ever so slightly on his rifle. It was the only betrayal of the storm brewing beneath his polished exterior. Karen, however, was oblivious. "Come on, big guy," she sneered, waving the feather perilously close to his nose. "You're supposed to be entertainment, aren't you?" The crowd began to murmur disapprovingly. A mother whispered sharply to her son, "See? This is why you respect the rules." Others stared, some filming, others shaking their heads in visible disgust. Karen, however, seemed utterly delighted with herself, unaware that her bravado was transforming her into a public spectacle of folly. Seriously, you might think to yourself, watching this unfold. Does she think this is okay? Who does that? Well, if Karen thought the stoic guard would indulge her antics, she was about to learn a very British lesson in dignity. Emboldened by the stoic silence of Sergeant Harrow, Karen's smirk widened. Oh, she was loving this. Her live stream was buzzing with comments, each one fueling her self-imposed sense of superiority. She leaned into her phone, practically narrating like a reality TV star. "Look at this guy," she sneered, her voice dripping with mockery. "Frozen like a wax statue. I bet he's not even allowed to sneeze without royal permission." In the crowd, a young boy tugged at his mother's sleeve. His wide eyes darted nervously between Karen and the imposing figure of the guardsman. "Mom," he whispered, "she's going to get in trouble, right?" His mother didn't respond, but her lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line, a sentiment mirrored by several onlookers who began shaking their heads. Meanwhile, Sergeant Harrow stood as unyielding as the stone lions flanking Trafalgar Square. The warnings from his training echoed in his mind. Maintain discipline. Ignore provocations. His face remained a mask of calm, but deep inside, a storm brewed. Karen, however, was oblivious. "Come on, man," she taunted, taking a bold step closer. The feather in her hand now swayed dangerously close to Harrow's bearskin cap. The crowd gasped. Murmurs of discontent rippled through the square, some snapping pictures, others muttering, "How could she think this is okay?" A few, sadly, chuckled, egging her on like this was a street performance, and not a blatant display of disrespect. Finally, Karen's feather grazed the edge of the guardsman's cap, and that was it. With a deliberate step forward, Harrow broke his stance and unleashed a voice that could stop a cavalry charge. "Stand back from the guard," he commanded, his words slicing through the air like thunder. The crowd collectively jolted, and Karen stumbled backward, her face painted with a mix of shock and indignation. For a moment, the square fell silent. Then, as if on cue, the crowd erupted into applause. A few cheered, others whistled, and phones snapped furiously. But Karen wasn't done. "Relax," she barked, her cheeks now as neon as her tracksuit. "I'm just having fun. I'm a paying tourist. You're here to entertain me." Oh, Karen, if only she knew how deeply she had miscalculated the day's script. The atmosphere shifted like a gust of wind cutting through stagnant air. From the edge of the crowd, a young veteran in a wheelchair rolled forward, the gleam of his medals catching the sunlight. He wasn't loud, nor did he need to be. His quiet presence alone silenced the whispers. His voice, soft but weighted with authority, carried through the square. "Ma'am, these men are soldiers, not circus performers. Show some respect." The crowd stilled. A ripple of murmurs spread, this time not of amusement but agreement. "He's right," someone muttered. A woman folded her arms and glared at Karen, while a man nearby gave a curt nod. Phones continued to record, but now they were aimed not at the guard but at Karen, whose neon-pink bravado seemed to dim under the veteran's steady gaze. For a moment, Karen faltered. Her usual arsenal of snide comebacks was useless here. She glanced at the veteran, then at the crowd, which had clearly turned against her. A scoff escaped her lips, less confident now, but still dripping with misplaced indignation. "Oh, come on," she said, her tone half defensive, half dismissive. "I was just having a bit of fun. Lighten up." But the veteran's quiet dignity had already sealed the mood. The tide had turned, and Karen for once felt the weight of being the outsider in her own show. Sergeant Harrow, still standing tall, broke protocol ever so slightly. He shifted his gaze to the veteran and gave a slight nod, a gesture of respect between soldiers. Then, addressing Karen directly, his voice rang out measured and firm. "Madam, your actions dishonor not just me, but the traditions and sacrifices this uniform represents. Please step back." It was not a shout, not a demand. It was a statement of fact, unshakable, irrefutable. Karen's bravado crumbled. Her cheeks flushed a deeper shade of pink as she looked around at the disapproving faces and raised phones. This wasn't the viral triumph she had envisioned. This was humiliation, raw and public. And for the first time she had no idea what to say. As the veteran eased back into the crowd, the air seemed lighter, as if the collective weight of Karen's antics had been lifted. Sergeant Harrow, ever the professional, adjusted his stance, his rifle resting with practiced precision. His bearskin cap remained perfectly still, a stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded moments ago. With unshakable poise, he resumed his post as though nothing had happened. Karen, on the other hand, was a shadow of her former self. Her deflated ego matched the limp feather she abandoned on the pavement. "Whatever," she muttered, glancing nervously at the crowd now buzzing with judgmental whispers. She slunk away, her retreat punctuated by the staccato clicks of camera shutters capturing her humiliation. Oh, the irony. This wasn't the viral fame she'd hoped for. Instead of applause, she'd earned collective scorn. "You'd think she'd know better," a man muttered to his companion, voicing the thoughts of many. Then came the moment no one expected, a moment of pure, unscripted grace. From the sea of onlookers emerged a little girl, no older than 7, clutching a small bouquet of daisies. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached the immovable figure of Sergeant Harrow. The crowd hushed, their phones now raised to capture something entirely different. "Thank you for your service," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the ambient murmurs. She held out the flowers, her wide eyes looking up at Harrow with a mix of awe and sincerity. For the first time, Harrow broke from his rigid composure. He bent slightly, the faintest smile flickering across his otherwise stoic face, and accepted the flowers with a gentle bow of his head. The gesture was simple, yet it spoke volumes, a bridge between tradition and humanity. The crowd erupted into cheers, the kind that comes from witnessing something genuinely meaningful. "What a class act," someone exclaimed. By the next morning, videos of the encounter flooded social media. But this time, the narrative wasn't about mockery or disrespect. It was about dignity, honor, and a soldier's unyielding commitment to both his duty and his humanity. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Harrow stood resolute once more, a timeless symbol of respect amidst the fleeting chaos of modernity.